Throughout all genres of anime, battle alone is the closest to cinema. The arcs of the battle genre basically function as individual films in a film series. I've said this multiple times, but I think my best examples are when I turned the Sasuke recovery and Gojo's past arc into movies, but replaced the fighting with money and business. Despite this, there are several arcs in these stories that have plots that just feel too simple. I've come up with several reasons in the past. One was that there were too many fights without other types of events to move the plot. Another was that there wasn't enough substance. But now, with the help of screenwriting books, I've realized a better answer. In Robert McKee's story, there is a section on act design. Brief recap, McKee defines an act as a series of sequences that peaks in a climactic scene which causes a major reversal of values. A sequence is a series of scenes, and a reversal in values means positive to negative or vice versa. In act design, he says that feature-length films should have at least 3 acts. They should either have 3 acts in the central plot and a couple of subplots, each with at least 1 act, or they should have multiple acts in the central plot. But he also addresses stories with fewer acts. For 1-act stories, he describes them as a series of scenes that shape a few sequences that build up to one major reversal, ending the story. They should be 5 to 20-minute films. For 2-act stories, he says 2 major reversals and it's over, and it should be a 1-hour film. The problem with these battle arcs that seem to be all fights, no plot, is that they're structured like 1-act or 2-act films, but the actual length of the arc far surpasses the suggested limit for films with those amount of acts. This is due to the amount and length of fights. Let me get really specific. I simplify the core of 3-act structure like this. Act 1 is the setup, Act 2 is the journey, Act 3 is the final battle. I like the Entertainment District arc in Demon Slayer. If I split it into 3 acts, I could say Act 1 starts in chapter 70, where they establish the mission. Act 2 starts in 71, where they go in disguise. The midpoint is when Zenitsu goes missing in 75. Act 3 starts with Tanjiro vs Daki. But if I split it into 2 acts, setup and battle, things become a lot clearer. Act 1 starts with Tengen's introduction and ends when Daki reveals herself. Act 2 is all the fighting. The first major reversal starts the fighting, the second is in the climax. So it's a 2-act story, but it takes up 31 chapters, which is more than the Land of Waves arc, a 3-act story. I believe most Demon Slayer arcs can be split into 2 acts, one for setup and one for battle. But like I said, they have the runtime of 3-act stories. How about the Battle of Fairy Tail arc? You could do 3 acts. Act 1 is the introduction. Act 2 starts when Laxus freezes the girls and forces everyone to fight. Act 3 starts when Laxus starts fighting. But is there any value in splitting Acts 2 and 3 here? There's no midpoint or final phase of the mission. It's all just fighting that bleeds together. If you look at other movies, Act 3 is like a new mission. Infinity War's 3rd act is when Thanos arrives in Wakanda after his Titan fight. A New Hope's 3rd act is the Death Star trench run. The Dark Knight's 3rd act is Joker's fairy plan and Harvey's killing spree. If I do 2 acts, Act 1, the setup, ends with the reversal of the frozen girls. Act 2, the fight, ends with the climactic reversal. It makes sense. Once again, this is a manga arc with 2 acts that has the length of 3. Let's try the Shibuya incident arc. The story starts with an action scene, kinda like the Dark Knight, but it doesn't count as its own act. If I use 3 act, Act 1 would be the start of the arc to Shibuya. Act 2 would start in Shibuya. The midpoint would be Gojo being sealed. I can't confidently say where Act 3 would begin, but if I had to guess, I'd say Yuji vs Mahito since this is the final battle. It might make more sense to split it in 2. Act 1 ends when Gojo gets captured, a reversal. Act 2 starts with all the following fights. Once again, all the fights bleed together from a plot perspective, so I don't see the value in separating them into acts. Even the Sasuke recovery arc is like this. Using 3 acts, Act 1 ends when Sasuke leaves the village. Act 2 starts with the recovery team chasing Sasuke. There isn't really a midpoint. If I'm reaching, I could say it's when Sasuke broke out of the container, but that's neither a false defeat or victory. Neither is the Sand siblings' appearance. Then, Act 3 is Naruto vs Sasuke, but only because it's the final battle. But this isn't a final battle in the sense that it's the last mission like in movies. No, this is just the last battle in a string of battles that happened in the same location. It's an extension of Act 2. So if I split the arc in 2, Act 1 ends when Sasuke leaves, a reversal, and Act 2 begins when the team chases him down. This makes more sense, but once again, it has 2 acts but the runtime of 3 acts. In simple terms, there isn't a clear division between the Act 2 mission and the Act 3 mission, which makes the arc feel like 2-act stories that go on too long. Having this division fleshes out the plot and forces it to go in a new direction for the 3rd act. It usually includes a change of plan, or a new phase to a plan, and a change in location. In Blake Snyder's beat sheet, there's a 3-part transition from Act 2 to 3. All is Lost, Dark Night of the Soul, and Break into 3. This is a false defeat, followed by a search within, leading to a new solution. Here are more movie examples of the act division for clarity. Iron Man's Act 2 is when Iron Man saves people. Act 3 is the fight against Stain. Spider-Man 2's 3rd act is the final confrontation with Otto after stopping the train, which is in Act 2. Winter Soldier's 3rd act is the final attack on the helicarriers. Mission Impossible, James Bond, John Wick, and Gray Man. All of these are action-heavy stories, and John Wick is the closest thing to a battle manga due to it being 90% fights, but all of them have clear divisions between Act 2 and 3. If John Wick can do it, battle manga can too. In John Truby's Anatomy of Story, he has 22 steps to his plot structure, but I only need to look at 4. The first is self-revelation. This step is the character arc at the start of the story. It's what the MC is wrong about at the start. First revelation and decision introduces new info that forces the MC to make a decision, move in a new direction, and adjust desires. Second revelation and decision comes after an apparent defeat, and it's info that shows that victory is still possible. Finally, third revelation and decision is more info that helps the MC beat the opponent. This plot is built on multiple revelations and decisions. Blake Snyder's Save the Cat has the beat sheet, which is based on 3 acts. Here are a few interesting tips. Act 1 is the thesis, Act 2 is the antithesis, Act 3 is the synthesis. Act 2 should be an upside-down version of the old world from Act 1. The B story, usually a love story, carries a theme and introduces new characters who are the antithesis of the Act 1 side characters. An all is lost moment is a false defeat right before Act 3. It leads to the Dark Night of the Soul, where the MC reaches deep within to find a solution, which they get from a combination of the A story and the B story. This is the start of Act 3. K.M. Weiland's Creating Character Arcs has a plot structure laid out for all 3 types of character arcs, but I only need the positive change. There's Act 1, then a first plot point with 3 character decisions based on their arc. In the first half of Act 2, there are 4 parts of the character arc that develop the want, need, and lie. Then, there's a midpoint that has the MC caught between the lie and the truth. The lie is the pre-arc belief, the truth is the post-arc belief. In the second half of Act 2, there are 6 parts of the character arc. In the third plot point, there is a choice between want and need. In Act 3, there are 4 more parts to the character arc. Then there's a climax and resolution. This plot is built on really fleshing out the character arc through her parts of the character arc for each act. As you can see, each of these 3 books list out multiple reusable plot points that force the plot to move in different directions. Sometimes, battle arcs are also very detailed in their plot and include these plot points. Examples would be The Land of Waves, Baratie, and Gojo's Past. But then there are battle royale arcs where the author drops multiple characters in one location and says, "Now fight." I went through examples in the previous section. What battle manga can learn from screenwriters and films here is how to add quality to their plots with reusable plot points. In conclusion, battle manga already have a lot of technical screenwriting skills, but they could improve the quality of their plots by creating a clear division between Act 2 and 3, and by using reusable plot points that flesh out the plot, characters, and themes. Also, read a book on screenwriting.